Hi, I'm Trisoma from It Starts With a Dream, and today the topic or the name is Are You Being Silent or Are You Being Silenced? And I got that from the Oprah and Meghan interview a few years back, and that's something she asked her, and it kind of always stuck with me, especially as I had been thinking about this self growth journey where we are sharing things, and like when you're making a business and you want to share something like your expertise or your gifts, your story, and you find yourself not sharing, not showing up, keeping quiet, holding back. And it kept coming to that question of, what are you being silent or are you being silenced? And I wanted to talk a bit more about it. So this is actually my second time to record this because the first time I didn't have any sound. So I'm really hoping this time it actually works. So I had been sort of going more in a healing journey that was faith based, and probably from like last year. And in it, the person who's leading it will sort of ask some questions, and then you'll ask God, you'll pray, and you'll see, like, what do you feel, what do you sense, what do you think God's saying. Sometimes you see a picture or words or something like that. And it was me really thinking about like why I found myself really quite reserved, in my shell, introverted, quiet, and how that was like showing up even in like business, in work and stuff like that. So it led me to like going right back to my childhood. And often something that has happened in our childhood are the types of things that affect us even as adults. So we have these situations that can be very traumatic, or they can just be emotional, even if this doesn't seem overly traumatic on the outside. Our little mind, our little brain has processed it as something very traumatic and, being in danger or being a threat. And then it's created this story around it to protect itself. And then we adapt how we behave and act to protect ourselves from, experience some of those things again as an adult. So it becomes like a self-protective habit or pattern. So I was looking back and I started to think, okay, my mum used to say that I was very bubbly and outgoing and chat to everyone when I was little. So I thought, okay, what happened then? Where along this line did I start being really quiet and a bit anxious and a bit nervous, especially like being a bit socially awkward and not loving, going into a new social situation and things like that. And when she was talking about me just like going up to talking to different people and sharing and being chatty, that was when I was living in Zambia. So that's where I was born. My mom is Zambian and my dad's Welsh. So I was born there. And this sounds like, I'd be looking at photos and she'd be like, oh, you were like, so, oh, you were a great flower girl. And you were talking to everyone. Everyone was like really like laughing. You made everyone laugh and things like that. And then I was like thinking, okay, when do I remember being a bit nervous to talk? And it was when we moved to England. So we left Zambia, moved to England, moved to Reading, and it was like leaving culture, continent, country, climate, all these seas. And if I thought about it as an adult, when I look back, I was like, that's a really big thing to experience at like about 4.5 years old, to leave everything and go to a foreign land that really looks quite foreign. And yes, I'd been to the UK before, but I wasn't like a baby. My dad had taken, we've gone there to so they could, his family could see me and meet me and stuff and meet my mum. But that, I was a baby. So it was like the first time going as someone who can comprehend and understand. When you're about like nearly five, kids can actually sort of comprehend, understand quite a lot. So I remember being in the classroom, must have been like foundation, preschool, I'm not sure what they called it back then, nursery, and we'd sit around the table at lunch, and I wanted to tell them that I eat with my hands. Like where my mum's from, where I used to live, we eat with our hands, and we eat this food called sema, which is maize meal. And I always wanted to tell the children at the table that. And I would think about it, and I just never would. And I was like really scared to talk. And I remember just being really quiet, wanted to say this story like every day and never saying it. I don't know if I don't remember ever actually saying it, but wanting to. And it must have actually really been a thing, because like here I am like 40 years later, like I remember like wanting to do this. So it must have been something in me. It was like, I want to share, but something that held me back, and I was really scared. So I remember just being really scared to talk and being quiet. and shy, and I had like one friend, and there's another girl that was scared of who'd pinch me. So I think I was like, it was quite scary and like new. And I spoke English because my dad is Welsh, but like they speak English. But I think it was never like a language that I spoke like a lot with loads of people. So I wouldn't be surprised if like maybe even speaking English to other people, to English speakers, was probably like scary for my little 4.5, 5 year old self. I don't know what it was, but when I'm an adult looking back, I'm thinking, yeah, probably there was a bit of fear of like speaking language, maybe speaking with a different accent, being in a new place, new food, because I think we did eat a lot of like Zambian food, and then we did also have like, I can't remember exactly, but I know we would have had food that also my dad would eat as well. He would eat a mixture, but I think coming to UK, I just remember some of the food was like so different. I remember baked beans and just be like, what is this weird, disgusting sweet beans? Because beans in Zambia was like savory. And I remember just be like being a bit grossed out by baked beans, which I love now. But I remember just being like, oh, these beans are like pudding, like they're sweet. And I just was so confused by it. Yeah, so when I look back, I think that must have actually been quite traumatic to me, cultures, continents, climates, countries, at that age. And then then we moved to Wales, and I remember feeling like more settled there, like in terms of like community, in terms of people, because my dad's family were there. We lived with my granddad a little bit, my cousins, and we'd have play dates. So I remember like just having like fun and being with my cousins and stuff like that. But what I did face there was racism, like very overt, yelling at you, go away, blackie, the P word that tends to be related for people from Pakistan. I'm not sure why people use it. They just used to use it for anyone who was brown in those days, and just shouting that kind of verbal racist abuse at me. And it was really scary. It was frightening. And I think there was like kind of one family that was the worst, and that would walk a long way around to avoid them. If like we go around that way and we're like, oh, they're outside, we'd like go a whole long way to get home, even though if you just go through that alleyway or that pathway, it would get home in like 2 minutes. We'd go like a super long way around. And then I also remember if I was out and about on my own, because in those days, kids were just out and about on their own, roaming the streets. And in South Wales, it was just very normal. Like kids would be out, and I think people knew each other. Like you'd know, like, oh, Craig lives there, Heidi lives there. Parents would, pop their heads out and stuff like that. So it was just very normal. So I was like going around by myself at 7 or with my siblings or with my friends. So I'd remember just trying to avoid that house if I was going to my friend's house or something, going around a different way. And yeah, it was horrible if you think about it. Just like it was the adults as well. So there were kids, and the kids were older, but they were adults. So the parents, I imagine they were parents, but there were adults who just literally yell racist abuse at us. My mum, who was like the only black person there, and in Wales, and that time South Wales, it was not diverse at all. You would never see I think we'd count on our hands when we'd see another black person, or mixed people. It would be like, I think my mum said you'd always talk to each other and like smile and just be like, hello. That's how it was. It was just like none. I don't remember like seeing any. I think like once or twice when I'd go to Swansea, and when we'd have our friends, like our family friends would come and visit each other from like England or different places. That was it. So there's definitely this feeling of like, it's wrong to be me. It's not good to be me. It's not good to have my name, my voice, my hair, my skin color. That just internalized sense of like, it's wrong to be me. It's not good. And that just I feel like that's what really led me to just shrinking back and just being very like in myself and keeping to myself. And then we moved to England, and then I remember just going through it again, just being super quiet, did not speak a word for months in the classroom, would not call the teacher's name, would just tap her on the shoulder, tap her on the dress. And I remember even once I actually finally spoke, and I just remember like the whole class turning around and looking and like, oh my gosh, she can speak. I don't know what they thought, being in an English village that was like mostly white. I think a few Asian families, they'd probably be like thinking I couldn't speak in English or something. Those were the types of thoughts people had and the kind of questions you'd get. But I remember just one day I was just like, got annoyed about something, and I just replied, and then they were just like, "Oh my gosh, you can talk," and me going, "Yeah, of course I can talk." But there was just something in me that just got so scared and just held back and just in myself, in my shell. And that just carried with me for my my teens, and in some kind of shape or way that was in my adulthood. I think it's affected me like in business, showing up. I think it's affected me in my career as well. Like just bringing all of me to like work and like meetings, and I'd prefer to be the person who do the sort of the work and not be the one who's like presenting up front in front of the clients and stuff like that. And it got me thinking. It's like, have I been silent or have I been silenced? And I think like for me, there's elements of both, and that sense of silencing myself, because it was like I can hide. Like, how do I hide? How do I blend in? How do I not get noticed? All of this not get noticed in places that were like 99.9% white. It's a bit silly, but that's what I did. I just like didn't want to stand out too much, didn't give opinions, didn't share too much, didn't say something if I didn't know it was like 100% correct, wouldn't share something in case it was the wrong answer. If I didn't think the idea was like, like a really good idea at work, I wouldn't really share the idea. I didn't want to look silly, didn't want to be wrong, didn't want to be made to feel wrong or be bad. And that was just like that internal way of thinking of like, okay, it must be sort of something wrong to be me. So I don't want people to like know too much. And that's how it affected me. And then there's that thing of, are you being silenced? Which I'd say is where there's an outside voice, there's an outside story or narrative or thought or way of being that you don't match with, and then you feel like you were being silenced because you've got a different opinion. And I'd say I see this more with politics and with just like worldviews of like, you see something on the news and it's like, this is how it is, okay, this is the goodie, this is the baddie, and then you're thinking, I think the goodie is kind of like the baddie, and then you're silenced because if you share that, it's very controversial. It's very like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? Well, like, you get a lot of heat on you, or like in the pandemic times, people had different opinions, but it was like you were not able to share contrary opinions to what was being presented in the news and the mainstream. Those people were getting censored, so it was like you are being silenced. And then because you see people being silenced, other people don't speak up or even just say what they're thinking, because it was just like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble, don't want to get censored, don't want to get some kind of ban on my profile or whatever. So the sense of there being silenced by your culture, your society, maybe it's a faith group, maybe like this is how we think, and you think that, so you're silenced because we don't want to hear you talk about, I don't know, something that you believe that we don't believe, or maybe it's in your culture, maybe it's like you're a woman, so a girl, so you don't talk in a setting where there's like men, you just let the men talk, and however it looks to you. But I guess the question is for you, you're wanting to share this thing, this gift, your story, your expertise, and you're not bringing yourself to what you're doing. Like you're hiding, pulling back, keeping yourself in, and there's that sense of being silent or being silenced. And I wanted to just ask you, what is it? Are you being silent or are you being silenced? And then I just get curious about that. And like me, had to sort of really go back and uncover and unpack this. And thankfully, like I said I was doing it in these Christian inner healing sessions. And we walked through like specifically racism and just like had a lot of healing around it just in that session, where it was like, what's God saying, and what does God think about me and being in a situation, and it just made me feel really different about all of that stuff I had experienced growing up, and it helped me it's like a broke off of something off me that was like keeping me stuck and hiding away, and there's always still work to do. But I just wanted to ask you that question, are you being silent or are you being silenced, and to just get curious and see what's coming up for you. And those things that you are silencing yourself on or being silenced on, those are the things that actually I think for you to bring. Those are some of the things that people who also think like you need to know that you think, or hear you talking about, or hear that you're open to that point of view. Because you might, sometimes it's not even about like you think a certain way, but you're like, this is a place where you can think like that and be welcome. You can question things and be welcome. You can see things in an actually completely different way and be welcomed. And those are the things that make you you and make why you're different to the next person who's doing technically on the outside exactly the same thing. So whatever it is that you're sharing, the story, the gifts, the expertise, the passions, bring in some of those things where you feel like you've been silenced or silenced, and share, start to share it. And those things that you feel like are weird, like I said, I feel like I'm probably one of the few people, I don't know, maybe the only person that I know who's into these like ancient mysteries. Like I like Ancient Apocalypse, and people think it's racist, and I was a bit confused like that. I was like, hold on, he's not anyway. It's just like we have to be able to just look at things in a new way and just be like, oh, what if it's different from how we thought? We don't know. If nobody was actually around in the past to actually 100% solidly know who made what and how. I'm also quite curious about like ancient peoples and tribes and migration across the world, and discovering that there are these like black people in Asia who are indigenous, who've been there just way like so long, and they are black skin, like the color of like a Sudanese, like really dark skin, some of them with afro hair, others are different shades of brown with different textures of hair, from curly, curly, kinky, afro textured hair. And it's just like, actually that's so fascinating. Like, you don't see them on TV. I didn't know there was Indian people, basically black, who have afro hair, who've been there for hundreds of years. I didn't know about these indigenous tribes in like the Philippines and the Andaman Islands, who had been there thousands of years, I don't know, a really, really long time, ancient people living in isolation. Anyway, my point going, I thought that was like a really weird thing, and I never really talked about being interested in stuff like that, because I was like worried, like, oh, you could think I'm strange, or you might think I'm a certain kind of way because I'm watching that program, and yeah, and I was like, this is stuff I like, so here it is. And yeah, so there might be like interesting quirks about you that also you want to bring out and share, that might not obviously be direct linked to what you're doing, but they are part of your worldview and why you see things a certain way. And that creates a space for others who also see things a certain way to come and be part of that community and maybe work with you, or maybe just be part of the community. And that's also really fun. And I think what a lot of us are here to do is to build with other people who are either like-minded, who are open to different ways and perspectives. So I hope that has been interesting to you, and I'd love to know if you are ready to take that step. Share with me down in the comments what you think you've been silenced on, or what you've kept silent about.